Outside of the beneficiaries, which is the social grant recipients, I do think there are people that make a lot of money. There was a company called Net1, which was making a killing of dishing out social grants. And not only at the time were they dishing out social grants, this was when Minister Ubatabile Dlamini was the Minister of, I think, Social Development, if I'm not mistaken. They were also giving out credit. They were also selling, I think, airtime. So they were giving grants, but at the same, and giving loans as well to people. They were making a killing. When you give money to people that are on social welfare, that money gets spent at spaza shops. That money gets spent at shops like Pep, at shops like ShopRite. Obviously, the alcohol companies make a lot of money. There are people that make a killing from social welfare in this country. Now, outside of this unemployment data, 63% youth, let's call it 45% real, general, and about 34% for people that are actively looking for work. The people that do work earn up a very small amount of money because the median income in this country, depending on who you ask, but Stats SA is probably your best bet, and then next would be SARS data, our tax collector, the South African Revenue Services. You're looking at a median income of between 3,600 to 5,000 Rand a month. That's not a lot of money, especially if you can argue that you're taking care of 3 to 4 people in our home. We've got 7 million people, 7.4 million people that actually pay income tax who are earning over 7,000 Rand a month in this country. That means we've got about 12% of our population paying income tax. The other 88% don't pay income tax at all. That's close to 90%. And I'd raise this stat at a time when South Africans are complaining that undocumented immigrants don't pay tax. Yes, they pay VAT like every other South African. But close to 90% of South Africans are not even paying income tax. We're not having the right conversation. Unemployment data, which is good for political propaganda and fuel, and is good for ramping up votes. We will get you jobs. I think jobs and land was the one campaigning argument for the EFF. I think even when Jacob Zuma were campaigning under the ANC, it was all about jobs. And I remember Iposa built on South Africa, Yamusi Maimani, Nonobuntu Hlazo Webster. One of their major things was that we're going to create 2 million jobs in South Africa. Jobs are not the thing. If you look at this data, 62% youth, 34, 45, we take a step back to before British settlers and what would become Afrikaner settlers and others would come into South Africa. We would have officially 100% unemployment back when we were tribal Africa. When you go to the villages, a young boy who herds cattle, a family that has livestock and that works the fields, when census comes around, when Stats SA come around, and they are asked if they have a job, they say no. The idea is not to have a job, because a job means you work for someone else. That's what a job is. You know, I joke with many of my friends who run their own businesses, many of my friends who are multimillionaires, some are billionaires. And we always joke when we're having lunch, like at a fancy restaurant during the week. We'd say, we're not at work. And we're like, yeah, but we're unemployed, chief. We don't have jobs. We're not working for anyone. The goal was never to have a job, contrary to what politicians will have you believe. The goal was always to be able to sustain your own life. And how you sustain your own life, at least in the modern world, is through income. The conversation, at least from a political level, is meant to be about income, not jobs. And then outside of income, beyond politics and political sloganeering and electioneering, forget even the income. Do you have a quality of life? Because if you live in places like Coffee Bay, the Wild Coast in the Eastern Cape, beautiful huts overlooking the ocean on luscious green grass, with livestock, beautiful cattle roaming around. Those people will tell you that, hey, we live on less than 1,000 rand a month. And then the people that run UN Stats and Oxfam and all these other global entities that collect data will be like, oh, the poverty in the Eastern Cape, in rural Eastern Cape. They don't speak about the quality of life. Those people are not telling you that every day we go and we milk our cows, and that's where we get our milk. And amas, mpogoko, that they have with maize meal, uputu. They don't speak about when they feast, they slaughter ibhokwe, a goat, or imvu, a sheep, ischap. They don't speak about those things. They don't speak about how they built their houses using clay and mud and cow dung, natural resources from the earth. We don't quantify their wealth on how much land they have. Because when they ask, do you have a title deed? The answer is no. Oh, so you don't have land wealth? No. We don't quantify the value of a rondavel, of a hut. And you'll find some of these communities will have 10, 100, 500 hectares of land. But because it's not quantified at the deeds registry, it's not private property land that you can say the value of this land is worth 500 million. These people are poor. But going back to the modern world and income, we could kill unemployment tomorrow, at least in the South African context. We could kill it tomorrow. But we'll say, we'll give you a job if you're willing to get 500 rand a month. But now you have a job. 500, I'm mlungwam. 500, I'm mlungwam. But I gave you a job. I think you wanted a job. Here's a job. In the same way, I normally tell people, you don't really want land. Because I can get you land tomorrow. I'll take you to Enyukasela, where I'm from. You go past town. You go past the big township there, Madadeni. You go past the second biggest township, Osizweni. And then we go to an area called Edix. Or you come before you enter the town. This is coming from Joburg side, by the way. I'm not speaking coming from Richards Bay. If you come from the Joburg side, before you enter Newcastle, there's places, Ingoko. Ingoko. 9 Mile. Those areas there. And then you've got Kilbachen. When you're going to Durban side, Ladysmith. There's so much tribal land there under Ingonyam. You can get a good hectare by thanking Induna, the chief, with 100 rand if you have 500 rand, 1,000 rand. You can get a hectare of land for yourself. But people don't want that land. If anything, the people that live there will leave that tribal land to come and be security guards and domestic workers and taxi drivers and cleaners and work in retail stores like Goli.